Oh, are we live? Okay, we're live. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 131 of the Security Podcast on the In30 Network. I don't have a good opening today, but I'm just going to give you some just general announcements. We're probably going to take next week off. So when you hear this the next week, there's probably not going to be anything. Hopefully my scenario behind me will change. If you're not watching the video, you know that I'm in different rooms. And we're putting a link in the show notes to join our WhatsApp group. So if you want to do that, just let us know. It's a simple link. And we have a Bitcoin link if you would love to donate to our Bitcoin fund to help us do everything. I spoke to our webmaster, which is not me, but almost me. And we're looking into making In30 a Let's Encrypt site. So hopefully that will be awesome when we get there. So I'm just going to introduce Tom and we're going to get started.
Howdy, everyone.
So I guess the first thing is we should just right off the bat say LastPass is now free. And that's a little caveat. The LastPass asterisk has a little asterisk there. It's free on multiple devices. It lets you do some two-factor authentications, but there are some premium features, but at $12 a year, I mean, nobody can complain about that.
Right. And this is, if you had, worries about switching to LastPass or using a manager because, how do I use this on my phone? And I don't want to pay for something and then have, absolutely regret it. I absolutely hate it just to see if I'll like using it on my phone and on my computer and like using it at all to manage my life. But, now that it's free, seriously, just go out, get the app on your phone, install the Chrome extension, try it out. The only thing you have to lose is your password reuse habit. And trust me, it's terrible.
So let me give you a scenario. So I'm going to give you a nasty scenario with LastPass, and it has been well documented. This is not a LastPass issue. This is an Android issue. My friend went on vacation internationally, and something was going on with his phone. So he couldn't figure it out. Everything was crashing. He reset his Android phone. So he reset it, and then he didn't have LastPass installed. He couldn't get in. So he did Google, I forgot my password. It'll send it to the back. He'll send it to his email on his iPad. When you do that, when you reset your phone and then reset your Gmail password, you are locked out for 72 hours. And unfortunately, now he's probably going straight iPhone and he's going to be anti-LastPass. But this is a Google issue. And I told him, you know what? I would have set up two-factor authentication on my phone and have the backup code on my tablet. And I would have let Gmail be a secure password that not necessarily in LastPass, but it's just one of those things to be aware of. LastPass shouldn't store everything. There should be some things that you do know just in case a scenario like this happens.
Right. And that's why, I keep certain or separation of powers of my password managers and my vaults and what I'm storing where.
I mean, we keep on saying, you know what? Look, use LastPass for basically everything else. Your mission critical things. I mean, your email password specifically when it's tied to your Android phone, or your iCloud password when it's tied to your Apple phone. Things that if it were to be lost and you didn't print out the backup codes. You see, if he printed out the backup codes and kept it in his wallet, he probably could have mitigated this, or if he did something else. But that's what happened. It would have been better because, like you said, I keep my Gmail password. I do know, but I have two-factor on it, and I have it notify me everywhere that somebody's accessing it. So if something were to happen, I would get it in 10 different spots right away. So it's LastPass for just about everything else, but your mission-critical things, try to at least remember them or try to do something with them that you can get back just in case.
Yeah, it's always good to have a backup plan because you never know what could happen. If you throw all your eggs in one basket and that one basket gets taken away, well, so have some backups, have some to exports. Don't have LastPass export to passwords.txt on your desktop. That would be a bad thing. But if you wanted to throw it in a Veracrypt container and put that on another machine, have CrashPlan back that up, you could totally do that. Just make sure you're using a nice sturdy passphrase when you're encrypting your LastPass backup. The last thing you want is, having a weak passphrase for your backup. Somebody grabs that somehow, and now they've got your password manager. So.
You've heard us talk about this, so we'll just really leave it with this. You know what? Now we're really telling you, go try a password manager. You want now a free one, LastPass, because before it was free on one device. Well, it doesn't help you if you're on your desktop and you can't, and then now you're on mobile. But LastPass does the fingerprint thing. So do the others, but LastPass now does it. It's free there. If you have a YubiKey, you have to pay for it. If you use Sesame, you have to pay for it. Again, if you don't know what those are, don't worry necessarily about it. If you want to do family sharing, you have to pay for it. But again, at $12 a year, it's basically free. Do some Google opinion rewards, get your $12, and you'll be fine. Just, you know what? Start with it. Start with your New York Times password or your Netflix password, things that you actually know of, and see how you like it. And as you go on and on, give it more and more and more and more. And LastPass is cool because it can say, you know what, automatically change my passwords every 90 days. What's the difference if you don't know it? Now it's changing it every 90 days. But as you do it, just be aware. So anything else on LastPass?
I think that about covers it.
And we say LastPass because they are friends of ours, but 1Password is fine. They're you got to pay per device, so all the phones in the family need their own subscription. Dashlane is expensive. KeyPass, I think Tom uses KeyPass because it's 100% open source and free, but it's not as pretty as LastPass. Things like that.
Yeah, KeyPass rules. It's awesome, but it is horribly ugly. It was one of the ugliest programs I've used in a long time. Like, you go back to Windows 95 type of days with the aesthetic. That said, completely functional, really extendable. They've got great plugins, but it's nothing to look at.
So let's go into our first topic. Tom sent this Moar Botnet. That's the botnet that took out Dyn last week and caused Twitter and Reddit and Spotify to sort of a crawl. Took out an entire country? ?
Yes. So it looks like the owners of the Moar Botnet are doing some more testing, trying to figure out what they can do because they've got a big gun. So why not fire it at things? It's fun. So they targeted the country of Liberia, which is a relatively small country, population of about 4.5 million people. Not very many people have the internet there. And the country is fed by the internet is served by 2 companies. So if you want to, you can, as long as you pick a small enough target.
Just say the last sentence again.
If you want to DDoS an entire country, you can.
So I asked you before the show, how is that possible? And you said that they only had one line, like one fiber line in.
Right. I believe they're fed through 2 transatlantic cables, from what I've been reading. But the pipe going into the country isn't that big. It's not really the biggest of deals to saturate it. But this is the first instance of a DDoS attack, taking a country off the internet. So people in Liberia were experiencing a lot of downtime, issues connecting to things. It wasn't like, they blasted off the internet and it's gone forever. No, it's an interruption of service. It makes the internet way more annoying to use.
Oh, we lost Tom's there, but he's coming back. If you want to know what 4.5 million people is, it's about the size of upper Manhattan or Brooklyn. Take your pick.
Right.
So a squirrel took out Brooklyn, I don't know, 10 years ago by crushing a transformer and taking out basically all of New York City. But again, it's taking out Liberia I think it's a small country. You know what? I'm embarrassed that I don't know.
It's a pretty small place.
Oh.
But don't be afraid, because if you live in the UK, Germany, France, Spain, the US, Russia, the pipes going into those countries are far too big to DDoS them off the face of the internet. But For a smaller country, this is a real threat. You could be theoretically, you could be ransomed into giving the botnet, or else your country gets blasted off the net for a week. And with the global economy, with the way business works today, everywhere across the world, the internet is a core, central component of getting things done, of managing the economy, of being a global player in a global market. And if someone threatens to knock you off the net for a week, you take a huge hit to your GDP, a huge hit to the economy. Being able to ransom off internet access like this is a pretty big deal. Now, that hasn't happened, not yet, and we hope it doesn't, but it is a possibility right now.
And look, we're starting to see it. And then that gets into the next idea of what can we do to mitigate these attacks? Because what we're finding out is, and I actually was listening to this, it's not the Internet of Things it's more of these webcams and DVRs that are on the network that have the bandwidth that could just fire away. I don't think it's necessarily my Nest thermostat hogging up all the bandwidth.
Well, it all depends. Certain devices like these cameras would be lumped in with the Internet of Things. The IP cameras are designed to, you throw them on a network, they have UPnP, they open up a port in your router, and you can access the camera watching your house from anywhere on the internet, as long as you know the IP address. Or as long as you can go to the vendor's website and log into a portal and access it that way. And it just connects directly through your router because UPnP opens up ports automatically if you have that enabled. Most home routers have that enabled. If you do, you should probably turn it off unless you know you're using it. Even if you know you're using it, manage your port forwarding by hand. If you know what UPnP is, you can manage port forwarding by hand. It's not that hard. But with these things being exposed in that way, you now expose it to the entirety of the internet. And if these things are exposing telnet and default credentials through UPnP, it's a recipe for disaster.
So let me correct myself. Yes, it wasn't that your thermostat or whatever it is. It's more there's a cloud service managing it. So my Nest thermostat has a cloud service. I didn't have to port forward anything. It's more of these old school style devices where, like you said, you do have to port forward. Do they still port forward on Xbox, or is it still just Xbox Live now?
It's on what you want to do with it. No one really port forwards their Xbox anymore. At least I don't think so. I don't think the Xbox might use UPnP. It's been a long time since I've set up a gaming console that's not a PC.
Do you have to port forward your PC?
No. Well, it depends on the game. For some games, for the majority of games that I play, they've got a central server. So the two clients hook up to a central server, and the server manages the communication between all the players. For other games, you will become the host. So you would have to open up ports and allow other players, your friends, to connect to your computer. So it all depends on the game. But then again, whenever I run one of those games, I always make sure to shut down the ports after I'm done, just in case, just to be, cleanly. A little bit of security hygiene.
Well, no, but this is a good thing to bring up. It used to be when we used to have the Xbox LAN parties playing Halo, is that we had to do our own port forwarding, and they would go to portforward.com, and this was not fun. This was also not trivial. It was a lot of work, and you figured it out, and then sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And I think when people started seeing, Microsoft and Sony said, we can't make all these people do it. These are teenagers. They're telling their parents they have to go log in. That's when things started becoming more secure, and they sort of centralized it. We're talking about devices that tell you, oh, turn on UPnP, we'll do it for you, and that's what we're getting in trouble. And oh, by the way, it's a default password. The password is hard coded, so we could just do it whenever we want. It ends up being it becomes a security nightmare. But you know what? These things you want cheap. You don't want to pay money for firmware updates. This is what's going to happen, and I think we're starting to see it now.
Yeah, there's many different ways to build secure Internet of Things devices, and from what we've seen, the devices in the Moar botnet were built in the worst of ways. PNP, telnet, default credentials. These are low-level things that get fixed you don't even build in these kind of problems. Because you approach the design with a security mindset, saying, well, we should probably generate a random password for every device, if you're even going to manage it that way. Most companies, I know with the Nest, they don't log into your Nest through Telnet to issue commands. No, the Nest reaches out to nest.com, to their web servers, grabs the configuration, the state. It says, oh, wait, it looks like the website changed, so I've got to increase the temperature by 5 degrees. A nice system that way.
Well, look, I just went through a Nest exchange. By the way, their customer support is fantastic. So if you're looking at pulling the trigger on a Nest, I will absolutely say yes to that. But if they say, oh, we've noticed that your dining room thermostat is offline, which always gets me nervous. But like you said, they have this monitored through their cloud system, and I didn't have to do that. I did put them on their own wireless network that's completely siloed off. But I think that's going to end up that's going to be a new Comcast feature. For $5 more a month, we're going to stick on an IoT, what's it called? An IoT part of the router. You're going to have 3 wireless routers. You're going to give it a name. You're going to get X IoT and X guest as your everyone's gonna have 3 different wireless networks in their house.
I think this is pretty ridiculous. We're gonna get all the way to client isolation.
So, you there?
I am.
I think Time Warner switched your TCP packets with UDP packets.
Yeah, it seems to be that way. I think we're going to get to the point where all these consumer routers have got client isolation, so the machines can't talk to each other eventually through all this security stuff. I mean, I don't really think that'll happen, but
I mean, I think we keep on saying to mitigate 95% of the issues, you just have to do a little bit of soul searching and thinking. I mean, I always tell people when now they finally got the routers that put the Wi-Fi passwords on the side on a sticker and the admin password there, and it's not password or password 1 or admin or whatever the default is. They put it there, and I tell people, don't change it. I know it's annoying. Take a picture of it, write it down, know where it is, because you're going to need to know it. You don't change it. People come over, you give them that. You go in and you manage it. The software is okay. I'll tell you that the FiOS people are using some variant of WRT. It is an open source client. I think the others are starting to see that this is more important. So we are getting there. We just need them to start issuing firmware commands, automatic firmware commands. Because remember, FiOS builds in the router. I think Comcast is are they doing that? I think they're giving you a router, but let them give you a router that has automatic updates. And I think that should mitigate a lot of the problems.
Yeah, a lot of these, the cable companies especially, if they issue you an all-in-one device, which a lot of them are, they will manage all of the updates themselves. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to get timely security updates all the time, right? It depends on the ISP. It depends on the guys in the background. But you have to balance it. Are you going to get security updates for your endpoint faster than you would put them in yourself? In many cases, in the vast majority of cases, that answer is yes, because most people don't update their router firmware. Most people don't know what that means.
And then the next thing is, if you're not using a device, turn it off. And I mean, I just wrote a review about this with the lights. The problem with the light bulbs is that if you turn them off, you can't turn them back on unless you manually do it. But if you're not using a device, don't just keep it plugged in. It's like if your computer is not being used, turn it off. If you're not using your security camera, turn it off, because like we said, Shodan is scanning it. I wonder if putting it in an IPv6 address would stop a lot of these problems. There's so many IPs on it, we wouldn't know.
Well, the issue is that, for a lot of the services you're connecting to, they're going to be, dual IP. They're going to have IPv4 and v6. If they're getting attacked on the v4 side, it's the server itself that's slowing down. So the IPv6 endpoint isn't going to be any faster unless they're separate servers with separate
So, we lost you again, but you're there again. If you're watching live, download the recording. You'll hear Tom.
They wouldn't.
I was saying we lost you again. I was saying download the recording of the podcast because we would hear you better because we're merging the audio together.
Well, about that.
Oh, okay. So it's okay. We'll take it. Anyway, so the last part is that we wanted to talk about was I don't want to call it the government, but should somebody, local law enforcement, the ISP, I really don't want to say the government, should someone be allowed to knock off a device, not forever, just temporarily, to try and mitigate these attacks? So if we find out your computer is flooding the internet with spam or whatever it is, can we call your ISP up and say, hey, can you just shut this down, and let the person contact and say, hey, we don't have any internet right now, and say, well, yeah, we found this, and then either figure out how to get them help to figure this out or whatever else?
In some cases, ISPs have actually done that. ISPs have said, hey, we're shutting off this connection. There's malware or there's something, it's attacking other customers, it's eating bandwidth, it's launching DDoS attacks. It's causing a mess in our network. And they've shut off connections to force people to call customer support. Now, that's an ISP dealing with their own customers. That's far different than, internet hacker vigilante taking out a botnet on their own because they can hack it. In one case for the ISP, it's completely legal and within their rights to do that, to disconnect people for any reason. They can just feel like it one day. Now, you probably won't use them for very long, but, it's their prerogative. But vigilante hacker person, no, they cannot do that, at least under U.S. law. Under U.S. law, hacking someone else's system, logging in to someone else's system, accessing someone's web page by the text of the law is 100% illegal. It is a felony under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, unless you have express permission, and in some cases, express written permission. You cannot log in, look at, or touch that person's computer, a computer that you do not personally own.
Well, I mean, the BBC got in a lot of trouble for this forever ago. Less than 10 years ago, I want to say, where they did a port scan. They found these open printers, and they changed the person's background on their desktop and said, hey, we're the BBC. This is, again, in England. We found that you're vulnerable. Call us and we'll help you. And they got smacked around by the EU for all these privacy violations. And they said, we're not doing anything bad. And the answer is no, even though you're good, you still can't do it. And that was a problem.
Yeah, and this actually, I'm not agreeing with the current law. I think the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act is probably one of the worst written laws for the modern day and age. It didn't really make sense when they wrote it back when they did, but even today it makes even less sense. It's terrible. But hacking other machines, depending on what you're doing, could be morally right? We talked about a while ago the vigilante hacker that was hacking home routers to patch them so they didn't get infected with this vulnerability that would mess with their traffic. That guy's a hero in a lot of our eyes. I like that guy, but technically what he did is a felony under U.S. law. Researchers have a lot of issues with the CFAA because they would absolutely love to open up a honeypot and watch attackers do what they do. Figure out, okay, they're getting in this way. They're using these exploits. They're running this on this machine, and they're trying to add it to this botnet. It allows them to get a great idea of who's doing what and how they're accomplishing it, and then we can build better defenses around it. But doing that is technically illegal. It's technically entrapping them. I don't like the current law. I do think, I'll say this, I don't think putting a worm out there to go and attack the Moar Botnets and close off all these devices is the right way to go. I think that could easily come back to bite us very quickly because it could be used in a bunch of nefarious ways. It could be used in terrible ways, and it could just get out of hand. I mean, I write code. Bugs happen. You don't want a bug to happen in a wide worm that's attacking the internet. That would be a horrible thing to try to clean up after the fact.
The problem is that you don't want, like we said, you don't want a law saying that, but I don't want vigilantes doing it either. And there's no way to say, well, we'll know when it's a good guy versus a bad guy. And I not that I want to give ISPs more power, but I think we should give them something. See, there's the problem. If we notice you're using too much bandwidth, we want to shut you down. I think it's ripe for abuse to say, well, they're streaming a lot. They're probably being hacked. Let's shut them down to gain some more bandwidth. But I think we have to try and maybe figure out a reasonable compromise to say, wait, well, these are unsolicited packets. They're not just going to Netflix. They're going to Liberia. What are they doing with Liberia? And remember, the ISPs have your traffic anyway. I mean, they can just, so we have to try and figure something out like that. And I don't know what the right answer is, but
yeah, and you don't want to give this power to the government because, I mean, then you legal FBI and NSA and local law enforcement. You don't want your local sheriff hacking you. That doesn't work out for anyone.
So, I mean, unfortunately, I think you have to give it to the ISPs. I think you have to. I mean, they're the first line there to say where all these the solicited traffic coming from. I don't want the NSA to be scanning where all this is coming from and then telling the ISPs. I'm hoping maybe the ISPs see something.
Well, the ISPs don't have to hack the endpoint devices to stop them. In the case of these spoofed UDP packets, the ISP can put in egress filtering on the edges of their network, and they look at the IPs and go, "Whoa, hold on a second. We don't own those IPs. Those don't exist in this network. No, that packet can't go out that port. That's ridiculous. There's no way unless it was a spoofed packet." And that would help a lot of these DDoS attacks. That would minimize it just a bit. It wouldn't solve the problem by any means, but it would help. Spoofed UDP services are one of the leading types of attacks and DDoS attacks. The egress filtering is one of the best ways to help push this in the right direction.
So, well, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else on this?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we're going to end a little early. And again, we'll be taking off probably next week. So if you hear from us, that's a great thing. If not, 2 weeks from now, and we should see you next time we see you. So everyone, have a good day. Bye.
See you, everyone.